My name is Edward Sonnino. Here's why I'm running for governor of New York in the November 2018 election as an independent, write-in candidate. It's because Governor Cuomo has been incapable of solving the serious problems of poverty, homelessness, unwanted pregnancies, alcoholism, drug addiction, suicide, violence, racism, instances of excessive force by the police, crime, a high criminal recidivism rate, high taxes, and the cause of it all, the generally low quality of education provided by the public schools, a high dropout rate, and low graduation rates. Greatly improving public school education must be the top priority. Had we done that decades ago and achieved a zero dropout rate, with every single youth getting a college education, we would no longer have widespread poverty, homelessness, addiction, crime, and violence. It should be clear to everyone that the key to solving all our problems is to greatly increase the quality of public school education. A well-educated citizenry means social and economic prosperity, practically no social problems at all, and sustainably low taxes. Details are everything. Just saying we need to spend more on education is nonsense. I know that from personal experience, having volunteered teaching economics and investing in various failing New York City public high schools during the Bloomberg administration. I was amazed that my junior and senior students didn't know how to work with fractions and percentages. They learned practically nothing in public school. Also, there was no way of enforcing class discipline and to have homework done. Everyone knows the formula of all successful private schools: strict class discipline and lots of homework. Both are indispensable for academic success. So, what is most urgently needed is not more money, but class discipline and lots of homework. Also, since so many students are having trouble keeping up, we need individual tutoring and mentoring for students in academic difficulty, and individual psychological assistance for students in need. That is the solution for avoiding dropouts and low graduation rates, not constant testing. We also need very well organized after-school activities in the arts, sports, and vocational training, on afternoons, weekends, vacations, and during the entire summer break, in order to keep our youth always constructively and enjoyably occupied and out of trouble. Of great importance, the public schools need an enlightened curriculum for the highly competitive global economy. One essential course throughout the high school years is psychology, accompanied by group therapy and good parenting classes. It should be obvious that having psychologically literate and well-adjusted youth is essential, not only for academic success, but also for preventing depression, alienation, alcoholism, drug addiction, suicide, domestic violence, rape, abuse of women and children, racism, gender discrimination, sexuality discrimination, abuse of power, unwanted pregnancies, crime, all forms of violence, and bullying. Gun control is not the solution for mass killings. Mental health is. In fact, all mass shooters are invariably mentally disturbed. Furthermore, making drugs illegal hasn't made them any less available. The same applies to guns. And there are many ways of killing apart from guns, such as bombs, chemicals, arson, cars, and trucks. Regarding unwanted pregnancies, the main focus should be on prevention, not arguing over the legality of abortion. Making abortion illegal does not accomplish the goal of preventing unwanted pregnancies. It never has. Nor does it reduce the number of abortions, which are always available even when illegal, just like drugs. Statistics prove that mentally well-adjusted teenagers studying well in high school with professional goals in mind never end up having unwanted pregnancies. Having all our youth well-educated and mentally well-adjusted is the way to end unwanted pregnancies and abortion. So, if we really want to end unwanted pregnancies and abortions, let's stop wasting time and energy on pointless debates and do the only thing that works, making sure that every single youth succeeds academically and is mentally well-adjusted. Another essential course is ethics, logic, and critical thinking, in order to have our citizens committed to ethics and honesty, to being well-mannered, and to making informed, logical opinions. That way, they will not fall for cynical, corrupt demagogues, for uninformed, dishonest, and divisive candidates, for unfounded conspiracy theories, for transparent lies, for fallacious theories or conventional wisdoms contradicted by relevant statistics. We will then get rid of all the anger and aggressive and dishonest behavior that has been rampant for far too long. Also essential is a course on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, along with the history of human rights violations. All member countries of the United Nations are required to teach the Universal Declaration so that their citizens are much more likely to respect and uphold human rights and reject all sorts of discriminations. Unfortunately, practically no nation teaches it, not even the United States. That explains the widespread violation of human rights worldwide. Animal rights are also important. Societies are judged morally by how they treat animals, all animals. It would be a good idea for public schools to have programs for students to assist in taking care of abandoned animals in conjunction with shelters. Adoption of abandoned animals would increase dramatically, while a citizenry committed to animal rights would mean a great reduction in abandoned and abused animals. Among the many courses listed in my platform is economics and investing, which is of crucial importance for personal finance, as well as for knowing which political candidates are truly knowledgeable about economics and propose truly effective economic policies. Part of the four-year high school course must put conventional economic wisdoms and theories to the test. That is, seeing whether they are backed by statistical history. In other words, whether there is statistical correlation. If there is none, the theory must be mistaken. Another part of the four-year course must be stock and bond portfolio management and economic forecasting. It's the best way to learn and get involved with economics, and it connects theory with reality. Each student would participate in a statewide competition for the best portfolio management results and the best economic forecasting results. Every year, the top 3 statewide performers would receive a $100,000 prize, and the top 3 performers at each public school would receive a $10,000 prize to be invested in their own individual Roth IRA account. Our youth also need to study and understand 20th century world history in great detail in order to knowledgeably distinguish good from bad foreign policy. They must also study history of art, architecture, design, and history of music, not just to have more creative and enjoyable personal lives, but also to have heightened professional skills. We need our youth to know the world better, and a course on world culture would benefit from including the whole video series of Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown, which focuses in part on regional food around the world, but also on society and political issues. You can see the other important courses I propose for the high school curriculum on my medium.com site, on my Facebook page, and on my Twitter account, @EdwardSonnino. My entire detailed platform is posted, and I urge you to read it. While turning every single New York public school into a very high-quality school must be a priority, competition makes for better quality. So, high-performing charter schools must be encouraged and not discriminated against. Having excellent charter schools does not mean reducing the effort to make all New York public schools truly excellent. The whole idea behind public schools is to provide low and middle-income youth with a great education. It is not to limit their choice of schools. High-income families have choice. So should low and middle-income families. New York public school principals and teachers should be incentivized to perform at the highest level with bonuses based on results, just like in the private sector. A critically important measure to ensure quality education for every single New York youth is to have a demanding and prestigious governor's high school graduation test, covering the most important topics, not just English and the sciences. We need all our high school students to graduate with an excellent liberal arts education. A liberal arts education should not wait for college. It must start in high school. A second priority is welfare reform. People on welfare need guidance and stability in order to become productive citizens and get off welfare. The traditional system of handing out welfare checks and shuttling people in and out of shelters, SROs, and motels has been a total failure since it provides neither guidance nor stability, which is especially important for children. So, the real solution is to create well-run, well-supervised welfare campuses with respectable on-site housing, excellent schools, health clinics, and social services. Socially productive and useful jobs must be provided by the state for welfare adults who cannot find employment in the private sector. Welfare children must be in school all day long, getting well educated and benefiting from organized after-school activities in the arts and sports. What's also very important is to no longer have welfare housing in established residential neighborhoods, since that is unfair to residents and counterproductive, reducing real estate values and real estate tax revenues. Since having zero unemployment in New York is essential for greatly reducing poverty and crime, New York must have public service jobs available for all comers. Those public service jobs must be designed to benefit all New Yorkers. One such job program will be the New York Beautification Corps, involved with landscaping all public areas and making sidewalks, train, and subway stations very attractive. Public swimming pools must be multiplied and beautifully landscaped. Public tennis courts and sports fields should also be multiplied. A truly beautiful New York would be a big plus socially and economically, as it would increase everyone's quality of life, reduce violence and crime, raise the value of real estate, and greatly increase tourism. Enlightened prison reform is also essential. The criminal recidivism rate is very high because rehabilitation programs in our prisons are totally inadequate. The focus in prison must be academic and psychological rehabilitation. The inmates should spend the whole day becoming well educated and becoming morally and psychologically rehabilitated. Beyond having effective rehabilitation programs, we must recognize that when prisoners are released and go on parole, they have great difficulty in finding housing and jobs in the private sector. So, the state must provide strictly supervised housing for parolees and socially useful jobs when necessary. That would greatly reduce criminal recidivism. A third priority is tax reform. We must eliminate the New York State long-term capital gains tax on real estate and stocks, while pushing for the elimination of the federal long-term capital gains tax. This is essential for fairness and economic growth. It is clearly unfair and counterproductive when considering the sale of a person's primary residence. The consequence of taxing long-term capital gains on the sale of primary residences is that sellers end up with much less money to purchase a new home. It makes no sense. It is punitive. In cases of assets held for many years, even decades, the increase in value is often in large part due to inflation. Consequently, a long-term capital gains tax is taxing illusory, inflationary increases in value, not real increases in value. Apart from economic fairness and logic, eliminating the tax on long-term capital gains frees up commerce and leads to increased investment. This in turn leads to much stronger economic growth. We must also push to restore the full deductibility of state taxes from federal taxable income. Trump's capping the deductibility of state taxes is unfair to the majority of citizens who do not benefit from large depreciation deductions, as do real estate investors, who often manage to avoid all income taxes through depreciation and interest deductions. It's important to understand that New York State must not chase away the wealthy with high taxes. No state can be prosperous without wealthy citizens who create jobs through their businesses and their consumption spending and generate sales and real estate taxes. To be prosperous, New York must not engage in class warfare. The solution for prosperity and to eliminate poverty is not to soak the rich and chase them away. The solution is to be pro-business and to have the right social policies. The more wealthy residents New York has, the better. It's the only way to have a prosperous economy which benefits everyone. The solution is not socialism. Rather, the solution is enlightened capitalism, which recognizes the crucial importance of eliminating poverty and social problems, but not at the expense of the goose that lays the golden eggs, which would be entirely counterproductive and self-defeating. You may be asking, how is all of this going to be financed without raising tax rates? The answer is the following. This holistic plan will greatly increase New York's economy and produce much more sales and income tax revenues. It will quickly reduce crime and poverty, meaning a big reduction in law enforcement and welfare spending. If borrowing will be required initially to implement this holistic prosperity program, financing will certainly be available since bond investors will see that the program makes a lot of sense and will be successful. Additionally, of great importance, the next governor of New York must make the federal government understand that eliminating poverty and crime and ensuring health care affordability is in the national interest. So, federal financing must be forthcoming, especially since states are not responsible for causing those problems and do not have the means to deal with them decisively. Let's not forget that the recent national bank bailout of $3 trillion was not financed through federal tax increases, but through QE financing by the Federal Reserve. It makes sense that the Federal Reserve should also use QE to finance programs that greatly improve education, reduce poverty and crime, and ensure healthcare affordability. That is a very important task for the next governor of New York. It makes so much sense. Here is a point of extreme importance. QE financing by the Federal Reserve should also be used for tax rebates in order to nip recessions in the bud and prevent high unemployment. Had the largely ineffective and unfair $800 billion 2009 Obama stimulus program not been targeted to new car buyers, the Cash for Clunkers program, new home buyers, selected infrastructure companies, and government employees, but instead had consisted entirely of a tax rebate, every single taxpayer would have received a $5,000 check from the U.S. Treasury. That would have been fair stimulus. It would also have been the most effective stimulus. A family of 2 taxpayers would have received 2 checks for a total of $10,000. That would have stopped the housing and banking crisis in its tracks, as families in financial difficulty would have suddenly had the means to stay current on their mortgages. Clearly, we must have QE-financed tax rebates as our standard stimulus policy because we cannot afford to have long recessions and high unemployment, which cause individual suffering, increase poverty, welfare and crime, wreck businesses, stall our infrastructure investments, and greatly increase our indebtedness. As we have seen, QE financing is not inflationary when properly calibrated so as not to cause excess aggregate demand. QE financing has its limits, but whenever there is unemployment and excess productive capacity, there is room for QE. That happens frequently for extended time, even for consecutive years. That has been the case since 2009. That's 9 straight years. If this visionary platform is implemented, the results will be amazing, truly transformative for New York. Just imagine the end of poverty, addiction, violence, and crime, sustained social and economic prosperity, and much lower taxes, a much more beautiful state, with many more beautifully landscaped parks, public schools, and sports fields. Our youth totally committed to getting well educated and involved in the arts and organized sports, never wasting time on the streets and getting into trouble. This is not a pipe dream. It can be done with the right approach by implementing the right platform. Don't go for candidates with vague platforms and mediocre social goals. Don't go for candidates with just slogans and wish lists, with no clear, detailed solutions. The mark of competent candidates is a detailed, logical, and persuasive platform written by the candidates themselves, not by advisors. Candidates for high office must be experts in their own right. Our problem as a nation is that we have allowed people to run for office without having first demonstrated that they are experts in their own right in economic, social, and foreign policy. That explains why we haven't solved our problems over the past 50 years. As the bad results of the past 50 years prove, non-expert politicians are incapable of selecting good advisors, incapable of distinguishing good from bad advice, and incapable of coming up with effective policies. We logically require doctors, lawyers, engineers, and architects to get an advanced degree and pass state board exams before being allowed to practice their profession. How is it that we allow people to run for president, senator, representative, governor, and mayor without having first demonstrated a high level of expertise in economic, social, and foreign policy? That's been a big mistake and the reason for our nation's failures. We must finally start requiring our political candidates to prove a high level of expertise before running for office. Who is a truly qualified candidate? A candidate who can explain all the mistakes in economic, social, and foreign policy over the past 50 years and can explain which would have been the correct policies. It's up to you, the voters. You, the voters, have it in your power to make New York incredibly prosperous, showing the way for the entire nation. But you must support and vote for the right candidate with the right platform. A candidate with an enlightened, detailed, visionary platform. If I have persuaded you, then spread the word. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Tell them to view my platform on YouTube, or read my platform on my medium.com site, on Facebook, and on Twitter, at Edward Sonnino. That's spelled EDWARD SONNINO. Go on Facebook and like my platform and candidacy. Go on Twitter and endorse my platform. Volunteer to help the campaign by printing and handing out platform flyers to as many people as possible. Call in to talk radio and TV. Take out newspaper ads. Advertise on Facebook. Contribute to the campaign through crowdpac.com. I need your help and your vote to make New York a model of social and economic prosperity. Remember, I'm an independent write-in candidate. I hope to get your enthusiastic support.